Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review number 107. Today I'm going to talk about Vinhos. This is a game that originally came out in 2010, I think, in Europe, and now has been released by Z-Man this year, 2012. And this game is friggin' awesome. Okay, there's the review. Good night. So, this game is sort of a breath of fresh air from some of the releases over the last few years, let's say. It kind of reminds me of Kalis. It's probably that good. Okay, I'm trying not to be too much of a ham here. It's really good. It's about growing wine in Portugal. It's got a whole lot of mechanisms involved in it that are directly related to this sort of rondel. It's sort of like a 3D rondel in the middle, and then it's kind of your actions there are actually driven out to the other sides of the board. So everything kind of revolves around that. So if you take an action on the one side of the board, that's usually over here. I'll explain to you in a minute when you see the board. One of the greatest boards I've ever seen. Now I think if you first look at the board, you're going to say, no, that's the worst board I've ever seen. But after you read the rules, play the game, you're going to say that's the greatest board I've ever seen. Or one of them. So, before I just keep going on and on about how great it is, let me show you how it plays. I'm going to give you a little bit of tips on the game. I think the game has somewhat of a reputation, I'm not sure, it feels like that to me, of being very obtuse or hard to understand, but it is indeed not. Now there is a lot going on. There is a lot strategic-wise that you'll need to take into account. So I'm going to give you a little nudge that way if you haven't played the game before. So let me just jump into it and come back. Okay, so I've got this game set up here for 3 players. And in the center here is this rondel I was telling you about. It's kind of like a rondel, it's not exactly like a rondel. In the center here, each player is going to have a piece that they're going to start with in the middle. And each round, they're going to take 2 actions. And you're going to take an action by moving your piece. So I may move that there, take the action. Next time it comes around to my turn, I may move it somewhere else, take an action. Now, if you move it to where there already is another player, if I move this here where the red player is, I've got to pay him $1,000. If I move it to where there is this tax marker here, and this guy's going to move along these spaces here, then I've got to pay the bank $1,000. So if there are 2 pieces of other players here and then the tax marker there, and I moved there and I was yellow, pay $1,000 to the bank and $1,000 to each the red and blue player. Now, all of these actions that you take here are tied to a location on the board. For example, you're going to buy a vineyard here, and that's over on this corner of the board here. You'll buy one of these vineyards, or more than one vineyard even. Here you'll take cellars, and these are the cellars here. Here you'll take wineries, and these are over here. So all of this actions are over here on that top row. If you go here, you'll pay money and take one of these cards. And these are sort of these different wine experts that are experts in the different types of attributes that the wines can have. So this guy's expert in smell. You can see the nose there. This guy's sight, taste, and then this guy's the drunk, I guess. He's the alcohol percentage guy. This center space here is sort of the pass space. I'll talk about that in a second. This one you can get these little entomologists here, and you add these to your wineries. And so these are related here. This one you can export wine, and that's related to this bottom corner of the board. And here's where you sell wine to one of these 3 different bars in Portugal. Finally, we've got the bank action here, and this is where you'll kind of manage your investments in your banks over in this corner. So you can see all of these are directly related to different areas of the board. Last 2 areas of the board are sort of the fair area here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And then also we have the sort of the judges, I forget what they're called, but there's 3 sort of wine guys up here that you're going to try to influence and get some bonus actions up here. So each player is going to start with a player board, and you're going to have 4 vineyards that you can have throughout the game. And so in this space you'll have vineyards and wineries that you're going to help to produce better wine, and then when you create wine it's going to go in these little small spaces here. So the very first thing you're going to do before you start the game is purchase one of these vineyards here. Now each of these vineyards has 2 yellows and 2 reds. So you can see this has 2 yellow vineyards and then 2 reds. And the cost here is on the back. So some of these are they're all the same for the stack. So these are all $4 each. These are all $3 each. So to start the game, you're going to purchase one of these. So depending on your start position in the player order, you're going to have some different amounts of money, and I just wanted to show you the money here. It's pretty cool, little chits there. So you're going to purchase one of these and you're going to put it on your board. So when I purchase a vineyard here, I'm going to put this in one of my spaces like so. So I'll put that there, and this is going to produce for me a level 2 quality wine. And then each of these vineyards has a different little special ability. And I'll explain what these are in a second, but this is the number 6 vineyard, or Alentio, or however you say that, you put that there. So if I came along later and I purchased another one from that same area, but it was a red wine, I couldn't put it here. I've got to match the color of the wine and the location. So I'd want to wait until this one was available and possibly put that there. So now I've increased my my production power. So when you're producing, you're always looking at these square numbers. So in this case, I'd produce a level 4 white wine. And so there's a bunch of these little wine chits here that are double-sided for red or white. So during the production phase, I'd maybe put that in there. Now these can be increased by purchasing a winery. So if I have a winery, I'm actually going to get a bonus of +1. So I would have produced a level 5 there. If I had hired an entomologist, I'd get an additional +2. So this would be generating for me +3. So that'd be a total of 7 value wine. And then as you go through the turns, the wines are going to age at the end of each turn and shift to the right. Well, if they ever have to shift to the right and there's no space for them to go, the wine's going to decay and you're going to have to get rid of it. Well, the way that you prevent that is you get these cellars here. So you put that cellar down, and so let's say I had a wine in there, I bought a cellar. Now my wine's going to age better. So I'm going to have more room for more wine to age. So as this ages, it's going to get better because I'm going to take whatever the value of when it was produced. So this one maybe was produced early on, it was worth 4. But as it ages, it's going to be worth more when I go to sell it or export it. And that's what this little circle number is. So anytime you see a circle number is how much the wine's going to be worth when you sell it or get rid of it. So in this case, if I were to sell this wine, instead of 4, it'd be worth 7. Or if I waited another turn, it will be worth 9. So that's pretty awesome. So that's pretty much what the player board does. You're going to be building different vineyards from different areas, and then trying to sort of enhance those with wineries or extra duplicate vineyards to increase your production power, and then hopefully throwing down some cellars to make them age better. Okay, so that's kind of just a little sort of an overview of what these wines are going to do, what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, you want to be producing lots of wine, lots of different wine. Try to produce as high quality of wine as possible. You really need to focus on that, because the wine, not only are you going to sell it and export it, but you're also going to trade it in for extra actions, extra abilities to do well at the fair over here. So don't be shy about how much wine you're going to make. If you get behind in terms of quality and especially quantity, then you're going to be hurting. So let's just walk through these actions relatively quickly here. So this first action here is where you go and actually purchase a vineyard. So you're going to get your initial vineyard to start the game, and then you'll be able to take this action here to purchase the vineyard. Now this little tax marker here is there to make this action more expensive for you to do, because there's 6 rounds in the game. Okay, so he's going to go 1, 2, so there's the 2 actions. So everybody's going to take their action. So maybe blue goes, red goes, and then yellow goes. It gets more expensive. And then he's going to move here, so everybody's going to take a second action. Maybe they go, to these different spaces. And then you're going to move it here, produce some wine, do a little bit of bookkeeping, not very much, and then you go into the next round. So you can see he kind of moves in a funky way. So he's going to go round 1, round 2, round 3, then down here to round 4, jump over here to round 5, and then finally down to here round 6, which is the final round. So the trick about him is he actually moves into the space that you most want to go to at that point in the game. So early on, like I was saying, you want to get a lot of vineyards. You're going to want to get a lot of cellars so they can age nicely and stuff like that. So you've got to really try to maneuver around him, especially as the first player goes there, he's only going to pay an extra $1,000, but then the second guy goes there, he's paying $2,000, and he's giving the $1,000 to one of the other players, so yellow doesn't really want to go there. She's got to kind of work backwards and maybe try to block or make the next action be more expensive for the other player. So there's a lot of little maneuvering and gamesmanship here. I quite like this aspect of it. So back to buying a vineyard. When you go here, the iconography is actually pretty simplistic here. So this means you can pay X. You can buy one vineyard from as many of these as you can afford. So I could buy one from 6 and one from 5 or whatever. You can't buy 2 from the same. So you're going to pay whatever the cost is. And the cost, as I said, is on the back of these. So these are all going to cost 4. And then I'm going to buy those and add them to my player board. Now anytime you buy a vineyard, as well as do some other actions, you can see this little cube here. And that means you're going to move this cube to the spot where you bought the vineyard. And you're going to be able to use that cube later on. Because when you buy a vineyard, you're going to put in a little marker there that shows that you have access to these cubes. And these cubes you can actually use to spend when you go back to sell and export to increase the value of your wine. These are sort of like demand cubes, sort of popularity cubes. But other people can also use them as well. So if Yellow came in here and he wanted to grab one of these vineyards, he'll put one of those in there, but that means now he can also use them to sell his wine from that area as well. So you got to kind of watch that. Next action here is you pay $2 or $2,000 and you get a cellar. Now these cellars are limited based on the number of players, so you want to get some of these. And you can see the cube marker here. So whenever you buy a cellar, you'll put a cube in to the spot where you put the cellar. So what do I mean? So if I just bought a cellar here and I put it in my little vineyard here, and that was for number 6, then I would take a cube again and put that in number 6. So wherever you actually apply the cellar to, you'll add a cube. Next thing here is to buy a winery, and you can see there's the little cube marker again. So it's the same as the cellar. When I buy this winery, it's going to increase production of whatever vineyard that was on my player board. And whatever vineyard I put that into is going to add a cube. So if I added it to my vineyard that had a 5, I'd put the cube over here, and then that would be it. Next action here is where you can buy a card for $1. And as I showed you earlier, there's 4 stacks of cards, each in these different experts. And so you can see she's the taste expert, he's the nose expert, that's the sight expert, and then the alcohol guy. And so each of these is going to have different special abilities on it. So you have these cards in front of you, and you can flip them over and use them for the special ability, or you can save these based on this icon of what they're an expert in to be used at the fair over here. When I explain the fair, I'll explain how you're going to use these. Okay, so we've got buying vineyards, buying cellars, buying wineries, getting the cards, passing, which I will talk about last. And then here we've got the entomologist, so you can see you can buy each of those for $1. And simply you put these on your vineyards here and increase the production of those. Next, in this corner, we've got the export action. And so each player has a limited amount of barrels here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take a wine. Now let's say I have a wine here of value 8 that I've produced. So I can take this action, export that wine, and basically just discard this chit back to the pool. And then I can put this in one of the 8s here. So if I choose to put it there, then I'm immediately going to get 7 points. And then at the end of the game, I'm going to get 6 points if I have the most barrels in this column. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So if I had, 2 barrels and nobody else had any, or somebody else had 1, I get 6 points at the end of the game. But when you export these, as well as when you sell them, you do have a chance of bumping them up. So if this was sitting in a cellar like so, and he was sitting there and I exported him, 8 plus 3 is 11. So that's a little bit better. So I can place in one of these 11 slots, get 7 points now, or 9 points now, and attempt to get this column at the end of the game. In addition to any modifiers from my cellar, if I was exporting a wine, say from this area here, and there were some cubes here, I could discard one of these or 2 of these, and I could bump that up another level. So if I had 8 plus 3, that's 11, and I discard one of these back to the supply, that'll bump it up to a 12, so I can steal that spot. And you can do the same thing when you sell. So let's talk about selling. So when you take the selling action here, it's similar to the export action over on the left. So I can do that. I can take an 8 here, let's say, an 8 yellow, or excuse me, white. And this is really the only time in the game that the color matters per se. So if I take that and sell that and the no modifiers, I'll put that there. I'll get 8, and I'll get $8 in my bank. So my bank marker over here will go up 8 points or $8 in the bank. If I sold, let's say a white of 6, it would go up 6. Now the other thing to keep in mind in this area, and this is very important, everybody's got to keep this in mind. If I have 2 barrels in the same bar, so this is a bar here, this little set of 4 icons there, this is another bar here, and this is another bar. So anytime on my turn, I can take 2 barrels back as long as they're in the same bar. So you want to try to sell to the same place. So if I had 2 of these here, let's say they're in the same bar, they could be in different colors, it doesn't matter. I take these 2 back and get them back into my supply, because remember these are limited. So you want to keep these to be able to sell later, and then also to use for some other actions on the board. Anytime you do that, you can take 2 cubes from the supply and then move them into any vineyards where you have a disc. So that can be handy to sort of build up the popularity of, the different brands of wine. Finally, or almost finally, we have the bank action here. So in the bank, you're going to have 2 markers here. You're going to have this guy here. You're going to start with $5 in the bank, plus your starting cash, as well as a investment marker here. So when I take the bank action, I can do a couple of different things. And if you look at your investment here, you can see that at the end of each turn, right now, I'm going to get 0, interest. However, if I were to spend 2, so you can see here, this is -2. I could take this down 2. I could bump that up. So I've increased my funds in the investment, and every turn I'm going to get +1. If I wanted to bump it up 3, 1, 2, 3, that would be bad. But I could move this up and I get +2 every turn. Now any time that this hits this marker here, or 0, you're going to lose 2 points on the victory point track. Now the other thing you can do is, let's say I had like $12 in there. I could take money out. Let's say I'm out of cash, because you need cash now to buy things. Anytime you see an icon like this with a little cash icon, or on the vineyards, you actually need actual cash. You can't use your bank stuff to get that. So let's say I needed cash, I wanted to take $6 out, I drop that down to 6 and then take the appropriate cash from the supply. Or I could put cash in the bank. Say I want to put $10 in the bank and bump that up here. Then I might do that at the end of the game, because as wherever your disc is at the end of the game, you're going to get that many bonus points at the end of the game. So this is sort of a point of contention, let's say, with some people I've played it with. Now, it is very important to know when to time your bank action, when it's the most appropriate and most efficient, especially as you're moving around this track or this rondelle type of thing up here. So it can be a little bit jarring, especially the first few times you play, about, okay, I have this much money in my bank, I've got this much money in my hand, I've got to manage, I'm running out of money and I need money in here. It's just sort of a brain burner a little bit to manage that correctly and know when to go take the bank action, because it's kind of far away from all the places that you actually need to go buy stuff. So there's your selling and stuff down here, and most of your purchases are up here. You can get the entomologist there, but your vineyards are way up here in the corner. And I forgot something. So if you move an adjacent spot, that's free. But if you have to skip a spot, that's also an extra 1,000 to the bank. So you can see you can't just jump all the way across there. So it's going to cost you money, and you can handcuff yourself if you're not careful into running out of cash and not really being able to do what you want to do. So anyway, an action that you might do is you maybe put some money in the bank here, buff that up a little bit, and then spend some of that. So if I wanted to get to that final +3, I could put a bunch of money in, then spend 4, and then drop this down like so, and then have more residual income from round to round. So that's the bank action. Now, there is an action that you can always do. You don't have to be in the bank spot, and that's divesting. So let's say I was here and I really needed cash very badly. So what I can do is I can divest. So if I drop this down, I'm going to get $2 out of the bank, but my investments are dropping. I could drop this down again. I can drop it down as much as I want. And now I've taken 2, 5. I could drop this again down to 8, but I'm going to be losing $2 in my bank every turn. So you need to be careful with that. But if you're really, hurting for cash, and you're going to be hurting for cash at the beginning of the game, you maybe just want to do a divest action so you can get an extra vineyard. It's sort of like taking a loan out in a sense. So don't be afraid to use this, but also be careful about using this so you don't get in sort of a negative investment situation. Also, just one other little icon here. For each entomologist you have, you're going to lose 1 every turn in your bank. Okay, so those are the main actions of the game. I haven't talked about the center space. I'm about to talk about it in just a second. So you can buy vineyards, buy cellars, buy wineries, get cards to use maybe for their special actions, entomologists, export, sell, and then sort of manage your money at the bank. So you're going to get 2 actions per turn. You got 1, 2, and then we're going to go into production and then management of your funds. And production is going to be based off of whatever you've got on your player board. So let's say I've just got this, for my argument's sake, this one vineyard. I got 2 plus 3, 1 plus 2, so that's 5 total. However, there's going to be a little bit of weather influence here. Okay, so at the top of the board here, above the turn order track, is this weather stack. Now there's more than enough of these that it will be different every time you play, or most every time you play. So the first round is always no weather, no weather. So we take that one and we discard it. And then in the second round, you're going to know what the weather is going to be by the end of the round. So we're going to flip that up. And it's got a lot of icons on here, but ignore all of these except this bottom one. So this means we're going to add +1 to whatever we produced. So instead of producing the 5 from here, we're going to add 1 and we'll produce a level 6 red wine, because this is a red vineyard. So we'll produce a level 6 red wine. However, there's all kinds of weather in here. Not all of it good. So you can see it's sort of cloudy weather would be -1, -2 for really rainy weather. I've had turns where I haven't produced any wine, because you get some of these early in the game before you had a chance to build up some of these vineyards and wineries and things. And so you gotta, it changes the game up. Now it affects everybody the same. So this is one of the cool aspects of the game, because you'll have some games where you're going to be producing tons of wine, tons of really good quality wine. Everybody's going to have access to some of the nice special abilities, be able to sell for more, export for more. And then you're going to have a tough sort of, decade or 6 years worth. So it's really cool. I really like this. Okay, so we go round 1, round 2, we produce. We flip a new weather card to go into the next phase, the next turn. Round 1, round 2, produce, do your money again. And then at the ends of rounds 3, 5, and 6, the final round, we're going to have a fair. And the fair is over here, and I'll talk about that in a second. So what the fair is going to do, you're going to want to turn in a wine to exhibit at the fair. And I will say that this step is a little bit cumbersome to explain, but it is not actually very complicated. So one thing you may do is pass or make a press release, and that's what this center spot is. And so you never ever have to pay money to move to this spot. Now it's adjacent to every other spot, so no matter where you're at, you don't have to skip any spots. And you never have to pay money if there's any other, players' pieces there. You can always do that. Now when you pass, you can drop down. So that yellow passed, and I'm third. I can drop down here and then adjust my place in the turn order. I don't have to go to first. I can drop down and stay last if I want, and I can lock in going last here. But if I wanted, I could go first, and then after we resolve the stuff at the end of the round, these will drop up, and then I'll go first next turn. After, changing the turn orders, I can turn in a wine to exhibit at the fair. So let's say I've got a real variety of wines here. I've got a 2 red, an 11 red, and an 8 white on my board, on my player board. And I can choose one of these to turn in and then exhibit at the fair. So there's a few things I need to keep in mind as far as what wine I want to turn in. Now remember that weather tile that we turned in at the beginning, or turned over at the beginning of the round. So you can see here there's an A, a B, and a C, okay? And you can see there's A, B, and C, Alexander, Beatrice, and Constantino. Now these guys here are sort of like judges or something in a way, and they have sort of a proclivity for certain things. Now he is always interested in a color. So this A thing will either be white or red, okay? And then she will be interested in the value. So this will be like an 8 or 6 or something like that. And then this guy at the bottom is always interested in where it came from. So this, remember, the vineyards are all numbered. So he's interested in anything from 1, 2, 5, or 8. So when I go to turn in a wine, maybe I would want to get rid of this yellow 8 or white 8. I don't know why I keep calling it yellow, because it's yellow. But if I turn this in, you can see he's interested in white wine and she's interested in anything 8 or higher. Now if he, the Constantino, was interested in the vineyard that this came from, let's say this actually did come from vineyard 2, then he would also be interested in it. And what you're going to do is you're going to put a barrel in each person that had interest in that wine. Now you can do that up to a maximum of 2 different people. If for some reason this wine satisfied all 3 of the criteria, you'd have to pick 2 of them. And you don't have to put them in there, but you're going to want to. So once you get that wine in there, you sort of submitted it to the judges, so to speak, you've got these barrels in here that you can use to take some sort of free actions. Now each time you take an action down here on these different action spaces, you can also discard any wine you want. You can just throw away a wine, maybe like this cheap 2 that I had, to move one of your barrels anywhere on this track. So I could throw away this 2, let's say, I'll throw away the 2, and then I could move this here, which would let me take a free export action. So let's say I was way over here on this top, top right space. I wanted to take that by a winery, but I also wanted to export before that, so I don't have to go visit it later. and I've got this crappy wine maybe from the year before when it was raining, no good wine came out, I could use that to get rid of that and take these extra actions. Or I could discard it here and maybe sell, move my bank up. Maybe I want to do that right before I go to the bank. I can move this here. I can buy a winery for $1 instead of $3. So there's all these kinds of extra actions here. You can take the bank action down here, and that's key. Remember I said going to the bank is a headache. So you can take that there. I can take this one here, get a card for free. That's pretty good. And then at the end of the game are these bonus spaces, sort of end of game scoring spaces. And once you move it here, let's say I put that there, I can get 4 points per seller in my player board, or I can get 4 points per entomologist, or 4 points per completed vineyard, and all kinds of stuff from here. I'm not going to explain all these. But once you move this here, it's locked in for the rest of the game. So it's a little bit of playing chicken, just try to get in there first, or maybe block somebody. If you get blocked, then you can kind of go to the second spot. You get 2 points per thing. But remember, always on your turn, you can take one free action, discard a wine that you don't want, take the action, and then do whatever else you were going to do. So once you've discarded your wine to give to some of these judges, then you're going to enter it in the fair. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at your player board, and you're going to see the value of the wine that you submitted. Now remember, we submitted an 8. The color doesn't matter. So if I get an 8 wine submitted, I'm going to grab my little chit here. And each player gets these chits in their color. So I'm going to get I submitted an 8, so I'll get the level 3 chit. Then I'm going to take this one and put it in one of these spots here. And so these are some different actions here. So I can put this here, I can grab a card for free. I can put this here and get $3 for free. I can put this here and I can move up 2 spaces sort of on this favor track here. So if I did that, move up 2 spots there. And so what this means, I've got a wine of, sort of this relative value entered in at the fair. Now you can do this, you don't have to do this on the round that the fair is going to happen. I could have done it earlier after a really good year. I can even wait and not choose that pass action at all. And then right before the fair, I can submit a wine. So when you do it that way, you can't give it to the judges and try to get a bonus barrel, but you just turn it in. So maybe you were busy trying to do some other types of strategies, try to do some exports or something, and you just wanted to wait and kind of see what everybody else was doing first before you wanted to commit a wine to the fair, because it is, it's a commitment. Okay, so what does this all mean? Well, if you go back to this weather tile, we can see here we've got the weather bonus here, or not so much of a bonus, and then we've got these sort of criteria that these judges are looking for. Now when you flip this over at the beginning of the turn, you're going to move these markers as indicated here. So the red marker, or the taste marker, is going to move up 3 spots. So 1, 2, 3, and then the green marker, the nose, is going to move up 1. And so these will sometimes move up evenly, but different years will have different tendencies or things that people are looking for in their wine. And then what you can see here is now people are going to try to play cards that equal the color of whatever is highest here. So if you remember, you have these different types of experts here, and some are experts in taste or smelling, etc. So if I had, let's say, these 2 cards here in front of me, and I just had these 2, then everybody's going to take and shuffle these up and kind of hide these, and they're not going to show how many they're going to commit. And everybody at the same time is going to reveal what they've committed, and then score on this track here based on where these markers are here. So I'm just going to look at this expert marker here. I'm not going to look at the special activity. So if I submitted those, I'd get 2 points because the red's in the 2, and then another point for the green. So I'm going to go up 3 points here. And so if I had submitted, let's say, 3 red ones, I'd get 3 times 2. It's however many cards you submitted. Now after you submit these, you're going to lose them. They're going to get discarded forever. And so at the end of each fair round, after rounds 3, 5, and 6, you're going to see where people are on this track. So you're going to go up and you're going to maintain your position throughout the game. And then there's 3 rounds. So we've got round 3, 5, and 6. So in the first round, whoever's highest up is going to get 9 points, and then 6, and then 3, and then a free card if you're 4th. In the second scoring round, after round 5, it's 12, 8, 4, and then even more, 15, 10, and 5. So the differential becomes a little bit more as the game progresses. So if somebody gets out to a big old lead there, you may even see people try to sandbag and throw away garbage wine just to get some extra bucks. Because if you don't throw away any wine, then you don't participate and you can't score any points no matter where you're at on the track. But if you throw away a wine and you're trying to like sandbag second place or something like that, then you can get those free points to kind of stay sort of caught up as you focus on maybe on exporting or doing something else. And so what is dictated here is where I put this marker. So if I put that there, it means I can play this many cards. Even if I had 5 cards, I couldn't play more than this. That's why you want to give a high value wine to get the higher bonus chit and be able to play more cards. In addition though, I can only play cards of these colors here, so the blue and the yellow. So that previous play would have been, you know, illegal, but I was just trying to show an example. So I would have wanted to play here instead, where I could play the red and the green. And so there'd be a little bit of blocking here as well, as you can see everybody's cards, and you want to get in there and take that, and then, you know that you're going to be able to play more cards or not going to be able to play more cards. And so there's a little sort of, you know, you got to keep your eye on everybody here. Okay, so that is basically the game. You play 6 rounds, you have 3 fairs, you score during the game at the fairs. You're going to score bonus points from where you're at in the bank. You're going to score bonus points where you're at in the export and try to dominate some of these columns. You're also going to get bonus points up here based on the different areas that you may try to occupy with your barrels there. And there's, 9 of these, so I'm not going to explain them all, but basically for doing what you should have in the game, you're going to get bonuses. So based on, you try to get more money or build up more vineyards or maybe get some different cards and get bonuses that way, you're going to get points there. Okay, hope you enjoyed the overview. I know it was long, so if you watched all the way through, good job. If you skipped ahead, then that's okay too. So yeah, this is a great game. Awesome game. The rulebook is very well written. You shouldn't really need a walkthrough of mine. You should be able just to take my word for it and buy the game and read the rules. That's how good it is. They are a lot of different things going on in this game. So how do I begin? So I didn't talk about the cards' abilities. So I just talked about how to use them in the fair. Now the abilities are good, and you're going to want to probably use them very judiciously in the game. You mostly want to save them for the fair, I think, especially your first few games. There might be a strategy out there that doesn't really go for the fair that much. I don't know what that strategy would be. I feel like this game has a lot of sort of depth there that I still have not plumbed. So save those cards for the fair your first couple times and use the abilities judiciously. The other thing is the special abilities of the wine vineyards. Didn't talk about those at all specifically. Then depending on how many players you have, you may use all 8 different types of vineyards in a 4-player game and then down to 6 in a 2-player game. Now you could play around with that and use all 8 in a 2-player game if you really wanted to. But that's kind of really sort of the forking fun of the game as you start out. So like one vineyard is going to give you a free cellar when you buy a vineyard. Another one is going to give you these little port tiles so that when you go to produce wine, you can discard one of the 2 port tiles to bump up the bonus wine for a couple of rounds. Some are going to be automatically worth more at the market. Some are going to let you trade in cubes and actually get 2 bumps in sell value out of the cubes. So they're all pretty good. So that is going to hopefully change some of the sort of scripted beginning of the game where everybody's like going for the wine vineyards and then going to get a cellar or going to get the wineries to bump up their production. So I haven't done a whole lot of playing outside of that, trying to get a lot of wine and trying to produce a lot of wine just through my own kind of stumbling. It seems like that's really the best way to go. But I feel like there's some room to maneuver here in this game. And it's going to take several repeated plays, I think, to really see where the boundaries are of some of the different strategies. What else? Yes, how does this play with 2, 3, 4? It plays well with all, I would say. I really like it as a 2-player game, but I also probably like it better with more. That's how these things go. But it's very solid as a 2-player game. And that's very refreshing. A lot of games they play okay with 2, like Kalis is kind of with 2, it's alright, but it's better with more. This is cool with 2. I really like this with 2. There's a couple of variants in this edition that I would probably take or leave. They're specifically a 2-player variant. I would say try it both ways. I don't want to talk too much about it here because the video is probably really long already. but I could play them either way. So there's a 2-player variant, play them either way, and just kind of know going in that your strategies maybe will be slightly changed based how the game unfolds and which variant you pick. And I like that that's there. It's just kind of another little layer to add into the game after you've played it a few times. I don't know. It's complex, sort of. It's kind of hard, sort of. But that's good. This is the game that it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that you're gonna, it's like a big old steak or whatever. But it's a good game if you like Euros. Then just go out and buy this if you probably have it already. Yes. So 2012. All right. Thanks.